Morning, everybody. Oh, there we are. 1 minute there. Hi, morning, everybody. I'm not going to start yet. I'm just logging on to say hello to everybody that's joined so far. Make sure that you can all hear me. Please do put something in the chat to say that yes, you can hear me, or actually in the questions. Chat never shows for some reason. I don't know why. Oh, and there is my webcam. So yeah, just turning on. As you can see, I am wearing a lanyard. Yes, I am in the office. So yeah, it is so nice to be in here and to see actually other colleagues and to be back in the office again rather than working from home 100% of the time. So yeah, we're back in the offices in City and Guilds in London, which is fabulous, although I must admit I didn't miss the commute. So that's just me saying hi. Let's just shrink that down because I really don't want to look at myself that big. That's just a bit too big really for me. Not enjoying the view of that at all. Just shove that over to that side. Don't know what how you're seeing me and how it's showing up on your screens, but there's a bit too much of me there. So hi everybody, thanks for joining me. I'll give it another couple of minutes. We've got an hour and a quarter because there is a huge amount to go through. I don't know what it is about these webinars, but I book them in, and then a couple of weeks beforehand I always think, good grief, I'm not going to have anything to talk to you about. And then literally it always seems to me that about a week before my webinar, a whole load of information and policy information or new information or new rules arrives, or in this case consultations, and suddenly I've got loads to talk to you about, sometimes too much almost. I don't know whether that's just DFE going, oh look, Bryony's doing a webinar, so let's just shovel this stuff out and then she can talk about it on the webinar, as if. That's really definitely not going to be the case. I shouldn't think DFE take any notice whatsoever of what I'm up to. So let me just have a look at questions and make sure that you can actually hear me. Just for information, all the HCs are watching you in one room. Oh, although we have individually registered. Oh, crikey! I hope. Well, thank you everybody at HSDC for joining me all in one room. Hopefully you can all hear me. We can see you though. Oh, so it looks like someone can't hear me. Can someone else put in, see if, let's just pop this out so I can actually see the questions. Pop that out. Yep, sound is good. Yes, we can hear you fine. We can't actually see you, but we can hear you. That's great, great, great. So everyone can hear me. Yeah, fabulous. Sound is good. That's fabulous. Can't see me. That's probably good, Catherine, that you can't see me. Although normally everybody who can see me, you'll have seen that recently, you know, that whole thing of working from home, everyone's been a bit more casual. Today I'm actually in the full office dress. It was really nice to put on a smart bit of office kit for once. Normally we're just, you know, doing that thing of where we're all in shirts and pajama bottoms because no one can see you at home. Right, great. So hi everybody that can see me. Really good to, I'm not seeing all of you, but really good to have you all joining me today. I'm just going to switch my camera off now. How many people do, oh right, so we've got more than 100 people on board so far. What's the time? We're a couple of minutes past. I think I'm going to start. Oh no, we've still got a lot of people joining. Nonetheless, I still think that I am going to start. So anybody that joins after this is going to miss seeing me, probably great for them, but they're hopefully going to catch up on what I'm saying. So let's just switch my camera off. Dismiss that, and I'm going to start because it is a particularly busy session. There have been a lot of announcements in the last couple of weeks, so I'm going to take you through all of that. So just that. Okay, so this is the agenda for today. I'm going to give you a quick update on the City and Guilds funded course directory, which I produce on an annual basis, because inevitably ESFA do one of their own updates where they add or take away qualifications from the offer, and we've had quite a few qualifications added, so I'm just going to speak briefly about that. I'm going to talk to you about some developments in apprenticeships and also the new accountability framework, which has been published in the last few weeks by the ESFA. So for those of you that deliver apprenticeships, I'm going to do a quick skip through what the accountability framework is going to be looking at in terms of what you're delivering, how you're delivering it, and the quality, and what they're going to expect in the next year. Then I'm going to do a quick 16 to 18 update because there are some funding changes for the 16 to 18 providers on the webinar. And also a little bit about T-level funding, because I've had quite a few queries recently through providers about T-level funding and Z code. So I'm going to do a very quick couple of slides on that. And then, of course, post-16 skills bill and qualification reforms. Loads going on in that area at the moment, absolutely loads. I just want to let you know the key points of information for you all to be aware of, because this is going to affect your qualification offer and your curriculum planning over the next few years. So you all really need to be aware of what those reforms and what those consultations are saying. Then a little bit about the lifelong learning entitlement and consultation, because that's been published in the last few weeks as well. And then a quick adult skills AEB update on what's happening there. And then hopefully we will have time for questions. And I think that's quite enough. I was going to do the levelling up white paper and do a bit on that and tell you what's in it, because some of that has got skills, but honestly, it's 382 pages. I've read it once, I don't understand it. Then I read the summary, I didn't particularly understand that, and the summary is 82 pages. So yeah, I probably need to do a little bit more on that and find out if there's really anything in there, because a lot of the information I found in the levelling up white paper that was geared towards skills was stuff that's already happening, that's being done by other government departments, and they've just put it in the levelling up white paper. But there are a few bits and pieces in there, but I'm going to skip past it because it's not anything particularly major currently. I was hoping there'd be a lot more about the Shared Prosperity Fund in there, but there isn't as much as we'd hoped, or as I'd hoped. So I've exited that from this particular session because I think we've got more than enough to cover. So course directory update. So there's just the link for you. The most important thing about the January update of the funded course directory that I produced for you all to use for your curriculum planning is that the ESFA, one of the things that a lot of you will know is that mayoral combined authorities, MCAs, are allowed to add qualifications back into the publicly funded offer that can only be delivered in their region. And they can request the ESFA put qualifications that have been defunded back into the AEB offer for delivery by MCAs only. So those that qualification delivery is linked to the postcode of learners in those MCA regions. And there are category codes attached to that. 41 and 47, I think, are the two category codes. But they've now included a further 30 qualifications in the MCA offer. So for those of you that have got adult education budget and sit in the mayoral combined authority and have a contract with the mayoral combined authorities, there are another 30 qualifications added to that offer that you may be able to access. Also, the ESFA has included another 20 qualifications added to the National Skills Fund Level 3 offer for adults. So there's now additional qualifications in the funded course directory, so you might want to have a look at those. And those two streams of qualifications, the MCA quals and the National Skills Fund Level 3 quals, are on separate tabs in that course directory, so you can easily see them and have a look to see what's available. So that's the link to the directory. And just to give you an idea, you can see here some of the quals that have been added to the MCA offer. Interestingly, they've added a lot of ICT for Practitioner Awards. So you can see some of them here. You've got award in coding and logic, award in business processes, award in principles of coding, cloud services. We've also got award for the requirements for electrical installations. That's the B5767. And award in hybrid electrical vehicle repair. So that can be a nice bolt-on award for someone who's already qualified as a mechanic. I think that's how some of the mayoral combined authorities are using it. The other thing that's dropped in, which I think is really interesting, and is obviously linked to the green agenda and green skills, is the one from the bottom up, the award in heat pump system design. It's also linked to hydrocarbon refrigeration and air conditioning, but heat pump design, commissioning services and maintenance is in there. And just for your information, we are developing a new heat pump diploma. We've got one already that's available, and it's available in the MCA offer, but we're redeveloping that so it's up to date, and hope to be able to release the new version of that next year, so next academic year from 1st of August. So because that's becoming quite a big area, and there's a lot of construction businesses out there because of the new policy by government that any new builds have to have heat pumps rather than gas or oil boilers. That's going to be a big one, so we're making sure that what we've got there is completely up to date. So that's just a quick update on the funded course directory. So apprenticeships, just a quick to let you know, apprenticeship funding, IFATE did the Institute for Apprenticeships and Technical Education, real long-winded one, so I'm just going to shorten it to IFATE, or the Institute, have done an apprenticeship funding band consultation over the last 18 months, and they basically looked at how they allocate funding bands to apprenticeships. That's now pretty much finished. So what they're basically saying is the new way to allocate a funding band to a new apprenticeship will be under the new model way of doing it, which I think is fairer. They've done it in consultation with employers and providers, and I'll show you how that works in a minute. But also any apprenticeships that are apprenticeship standards that are being revised and updated, they will be using that funding model guidance to potentially update the funding band. So for those of you that are delivering standards, you need to keep a close eye on not only new apprenticeships coming out if you're thinking about delivering them, but also on the current ones you're delivering, and check the revision process. The link is there to the new funding model guidance there on that red line. But this is what they basically did. So for the learning aspect, they look at the hours training times by the teaching cost and the group size. And then they times that by the hours of one-to-one training and the teaching costs. They also add in non-teaching cost time, and that gives them the teaching estimate costs, including consumables. They also add in things like software licenses, if you need software licenses to deliver. That gives them the consumables estimate. Then they do the assessment part, and you can see that there, and they've got two parts for that. How much it costs to run a formative monthly assessment with no mandatory qualification, and then the same with a mandatory qualification. That gives them the formative assessment estimate costs. And then obviously endpoint assessment costs, and they've come to endpoint assessment organisations like ourselves and asked us for our input on the costs of EPA, and that's moderated by the Institute. So there's the EPA estimate, and then obviously they've done 6 fixed rates for the higher level apprenticeships, like fixed rates for degrees. And then final administration cost, and that gives them the eligible cost margin and then the funding band recommendation. So they're taking into consideration all the costs which have been put forward by providers and employers, and they're using that to assess the funding band. What that basically means for us and for you as providers is some funding bands may go up, some funding bands may go down, as they always have. They've also looked at current delivery of apprenticeship standards and how much it's costing providers to deliver them, and they're taking that into consideration when they're looking at things like hours training and teaching costs. To get an overall view of the market and what it's actually costing to deliver individual apprenticeship standards. So it does mean that, you know, when you get to these revision status reports, like I've got a screenshot of one there, when they're doing the revision of individual standards, they are listing the apprenticeships where they are looking to address the cost. So where they're doing the reasons for revision, some of them might actually state that they're looking at the funding band as well. So you can see this is only part of the list. There's actually about 50 apprenticeship standards on the list that are being revised at the moment. So worth going in and checking this on a regular basis. They update it every 8 weeks, but it does show you there's funding bands which are being revised. So they might have new content. Some of that content is going to be mandatory, and also they might be updating the funding band. Now, obviously, if you started apprentices on the current funded band and standard, it stays until they finish. But if you're starting new apprentices, they'll need to generally start on the new version and on the new funding band if one has been allocated, which, as I say, might have gone up, but might have gone down as well. So that's the apprenticeship standards funding band revision and the revision status report. And if you just put IFATE revision status report into your Google or your Microsoft Edge or whatever search engine you use, that will bring you up to that page, or you can click on any of the links that you can see on this page and that will take you straight to it as well. If you want to know more about the revision process, that's available on the IFATE site as well. So, accountability framework for apprenticeships. I thought it was just worth having a quick skip through this. I say quick, it's quite comprehensive, and just flagging a few things for all of you apprenticeship providers to be aware of. Obviously, with the accountability framework, this is how the ESFA hold providers to account for the quality of your delivery and your outcomes, particularly outcomes based. What they're looking to do is make sure that you are delivering apprenticeships in a way that achieves for the learner and has a good outcome, I suppose, for the learner and for the employer. So they use a lot of data from the ILR for this. So your ILR data returns are really important. Please make sure, everybody, that you are using your PD SAT reports to check. Your MIS managers should be printing out PD SAT reports for individual apprenticeship leads anyway, for you to look at and check there aren't any sort of, isn't any information in those reports which might be flagged as a bone of contention when it comes to your accountability framework. But I'll just quickly look at those things that they're looking at. And the PD SAT has reports on most of this. Obviously, it doesn't have reports on your Ofsted. That's your Ofsted inspection outcome and the ESA intervention in there. But what they do look at, as we know, is achievement rates and also retention on programme. Now, as we all know, because of COVID, there's been obviously the whole attention and achievement rate issue has been a bit of a bone of contention and difficult to really quantify over the last couple of years. But they will be using the achievement rates from 2020, 2021. Now, they're not published till March. We're in March yet, but they're not out yet. So they will be using them and deciding on achievement rates and retention rates for the accountability framework and updating the whole framework in April. Because the other thing they've also given providers and any other body that feels like they should make comment, the opportunity to make comment on the new accountability framework and the technical document which was published a couple of weeks ago, in case you think there's anything in there which is unfair or isn't going to work or is inoperable. So that feedback, I think the deadline for that was actually last week, so there's no longer a chance to feed back on the framework. But I know that AELP have fed back on a couple of things, for example, that they're concerned about, and I'm sure that other providers and other bodies will have done so as well. So retention and achievement rates and also withdrawals they will look at, and I'll go into a bit more detail about this in a minute. And they do compare all providers to other providers delivering similar standards or in similar sectors to come to their decisions about this. They're also looking at employer ratings of providers on the apprenticeship service and now apprentice ratings of providers on the apprenticeship service as well. That's going to become available to the ESFA from April 2022. So if your apprentices are going on putting a rating on you as a provider on the apprenticeship service, the ESFA is going to start taking that into account as part of the apprenticeship accountability framework. So be aware of that, and if your apprentices are, you're encouraging your apprentices to put their comments on the apprenticeship service, that's going to be taken into account. So you've got a list there at the bottom. Breaks in learning are things they look at, withdrawals, learners that have passed their planned end dates, off the job data. So obviously, as we know, there's been that change in the funding rules where you have to put in the planned hours and the actual hours into your ILR now, and the updated data on that is expected by the ESFA in April 2022, so they're adding that in to the apprenticeship framework. So I've put there in that bottom right hand yellow button the link to the off-the-job training guidance, because I think it's really important that everyone's just completely aware of what the off-the-job requirements are. There's a really great flowchart which I was going to include, but I haven't managed to fit it in, which shows what off-the-job is and isn't on the National Apprenticeship Service link. So that shows up on that page that I've got the link to on bottom right hand side there as well. That's just worth checking. And also endpoint assessment registration, that's new in that area as well. So these are the bits that they think of or that they consider to hold a provider to account of who they consider to be at risk. So these are the thresholds for when a provider becomes at risk during the apprenticeship accountability framework. So inspection outcome, obviously if you get an inadequate outcome, you're instantly on an at-risk register for the ESFA with delivering your apprenticeships. So they'd be looking at, another quick 6-month inspection check to see where you've got to. The attention and achievement rates and the thresholds for that, the percentage thresholds are yet to be confirmed. That will be published pretty soon. So I'll cover that in my next webinar next term. Withdrawals, so basically what they're saying with withdrawals, if you have apprentices that withdraw from their programme and your percentage of withdrawals is greater than 35% of your total cohort of apprentices, you will again instantly be an at-risk provider. Considering the last year or so, I think that's quite tough. So that is definitely one to be aware of. And also, if you have a small cohort or a large cohort, that there are constraints around that. And I know that AELP have flagged that as a bit of an issue, dependent on size of cohort. Then you've got planned end dates. So the number of your apprentices, or the percentage of your apprentices that are way past their planned end date of more than 365 days. If it's greater than 15%, again, you become at risk. Breaks in learning, again, it's the same thing. If you've got more, the total cohort of apprentices, more than 15% of them are taking a break in learning, that again puts you at risk. And then the final data they're looking at is the apprentices where there is no endpoint assessment organisation identified within 3 months of the planned end date. So if you haven't got your EPAO identified on your ILR within 3 months of the planned end date, they will pick that up and immediately put you at risk as well. Now, on the right-hand side there, you can see there's a series of links that I've given you. The accountability framework page is the top one. Your PDSAT, that's your suite of reports that your MIS team can use to download and apply to your MIS returns, your data returns, to show areas that might be an at risk for you as a provider against that accountability framework. And if your MIS team aren't printing them out for you on a regular basis and checking them and helping you check them, then they should be, and you should be going to them and asking them for that suite of accounts. PDSAT's an incredibly useful tool, software tool for everyone on your MIS teams to use, so make sure they are using it. And also now there is the AFED, and for the love nor money, I cannot remember what that actually stands for, that acronym, but that's another software suite and dashboard that you can use that the ESFA has recently made available to support you looking at areas that might need some attention. So what might the EFA do? What are the interventions that they could put in place? Well, the first one they put in place, if anything's at risk, is the requirement for you to produce an improvement plan and share it with them so that they can agree the specified targets you put in that have got to be met within a time period for you to improve, and they can see those improvements happening. If they've got any major concerns about a provider, they may flag it to Ofsted, and so that would rank you up in the planning for Ofsted for their inspection. So you might think you've got another 2 years before an Ofsted inspection, but if ESFA aren't happy, they flag it with Ofsted, and you could suddenly find that you've got an Ofsted inspection coming up in the next couple of months, or that Ofsted might suddenly appear on your doorstep, as they do, a couple of days beforehand, going, oh yeah, you thought you had 3 years and now we're here. So they can flag concerns to Ofsted, which can sort of bring you up in the listing of when you're going to get inspected. They can require you to cease use of a particular subcontractor if they've got concerns about that subcontractor and that delivery. They can also suspend you from delivering particular apprenticeship standards if they have got concerns or they think that there are high risks with a particular standard that you're delivering. And then the final one that they can do, obviously, is that nasty bottom one, which is the termination of the contract for apprenticeship delivery and removal from the register of apprenticeship training providers, ROTAP, if they are really hacked off and they don't think that you've addressed the plan, you stuck to the timelines, or actually if everything, you're coming up with all 4 of those issues across your whole cohort of apprentices, it's more than likely they could turn around and say, actually, we're really, really unhappy with you and we're going to remove you. Normally they don't do that, and they do have conversations with the provider before they do that. They don't just write you a letter saying, hi, we're removing you. They have conversations, and you'll know about it before they write the final letter. But that's their final port of call for removal of the register if they're really unhappy and they don't think that you've made any attempt to improve. So that's the accountability framework. Lots of links in there for you to have a look at. Please make sure that you are looking at it, because it is what the ESFA are going to use to hold you to account. So 16 to 18 funding and policy update. Lots happening here, which is unusual because 16 to 18 has stayed fairly steady for a while. And when I've done my webinars, I haven't really had much to say about what's happening with 16 to 18, but all sorts of things are popping up. Not just this, but also things like the consultations. So 16 to 19 funding rates are changing as from the 1st of August, which is a good thing. Probably not enough money, but a little bit more is better than us poking the eye with a sharp stick, as we say. So you can see there that the current on the 1, 2, 3, 4th column over, those are the current rates per student, dependent on which band of study program they're on. That's the annual planned actual hours of that study program. And then the final column are the new rates from the 1st of August. So rates go up. The bottom row obviously is that, you know, students that are on part-time study programs, they use the equivalent for the full-time equivalent. So the final money will be, or the final funding you'll get will be a proportion of the band according to how many hours you're actually delivering, up to 299. So you've got quite a nice increase there of almost £400 at band 5, which is a good increase for a full-time student, depending on how many you've got. As I say, probably not enough considering all the additional costs we've got for you know, heating and lighting and all the rest of it, but it's better than nothing at all. So those are the new funding bands from 1st of August. T-level funding bands. I've just stuck this in to bring everybody up to speed with the T-level funding bands. For those of you that are about to or are already delivering T-levels, no major change here. However, I have had a lot of queries about T-levels and the ILR requirements, with a lot of leads coming saying, we don't get this, please can someone explain what all this is about? So, oh, yeah, right, okay, so T-level programs, unlike, you know, just a normal study program or a normal qualification, there's a number of the mandatory components in a T-level, and they've all got to be recorded because the ESFA wants to know exactly what it is you are delivering, and the DFE wants to know exactly what you're delivering. So every single element or mandatory component of a T-level now has a program aim, but not all of them are what you would call QANs, qualification accreditation numbers for quals, because not all of them are a qualification and they're not accredited by Ofqual, but they've got what are called Z codes. So every single T-level has a program aim for the entire T-level program, and that's the Z code you can see there, the ZPR OG001. That is the same program aim for every single T-level, and it spans the entire duration. That basically tells the ESFA that you're delivering a T-level. Then you've got the main technical qualification, which will have a QAN, and that's going to be different for every single T-level qualification, because obviously you're delivering a different qualification within that T-level. Then you have the occupational specialism, and every single T-level student has to choose an occupational specialism as part of the program. And the OSs are not a qualification, but the ESFA wants to track that. So you have to record that occupational specialism, again, using a Z code. And on FALA, then you find a learning aim, which is a replacement for LARS, the old learning aim reference service. All of the occupational specialisms have been set up with new Z codes, and there's one for every single one of them from 2020. So you need to go on to LARS, and you can actually put in search. If you put in T-levels on the first search page and bring up all the T-levels, and then look for the T-level you've got by using the sort of refined search, you can go into sector and type of T-level. And then if you look for the occupational specialism, it will sit in that T-level and it will give you the Z code. Your MIS teams should know this, but I know that some MIS teams expect leads to actually provide them with the Z code when you're completing all of your internal forms to send over to MIS, so they can actually input that information. So you need to not only include the QAN, but also the Z code for the occupational specialism, which will be in that T-level information on LARA. And then you've got the T-level industry placement. Again, this is recorded using the learning aim Z code. And that learning aim reference is specifically for the T-level industry placement activity, and it can be recorded in year 1 or 2, but it's probably best to just do it right at the beginning. And there is an individual one for each industry placement according to sector. So I'm just going to give you an example here. So this is an example of a T-level program and the requirement for what you have to put in. So you can see that the overarching program aim is that OG001, which is the generic code which identifies that it's a T-level. Then you've got the qualification accreditation code for the actual qualification in a T-level, and you can see the one that I put in there is our T-level technical qualification in building services, engineering and construction. And then you've got the program element code, which is the occupational specialism. And the one for plumbing and heating here, as you can see there, is ZTLOS030. And when you find that T-level on FALA, you'll also find the program element code for the occupational specialisms listed under that. Then you've got the program element code for the T-level industry placement, which is that 003. And then you've also got quants in this case for mathematics and English language for GCSE with this particular T-level that you're delivering. So that's an example T-level program. If anybody's really concerned about this, do drop me an email. Happy to talk you through it. And also, if anybody thinks it would be useful, I could do a short half-hour webinar showing you where to find that information on Fala. If anybody thinks that would help, more than happy to organise that. I've done it for the internal teams, so I've already actually got the slides, and I could run that on a sort of 15-minute or 20-minute or 30-minute lunchtime session for everybody. Put that in the chat if you think it's going to be useful. If I get more than 10 or 15 of you, then I will do that for you. So this is the big bit. Okay, so where are we? Half past. Good, got plenty of time because this is an awful lot of information I'm going to download at you now. Please do put questions on anything previously into the chat, and I'll make sure that I catch up with them towards the end. We've had a lot of consultations that we've been waiting for right across the sector, both us as awarding bodies and you as providers, plus employers in some cases, that have been published in the last few weeks, and they are giving us direction of travel on what is going to happen in terms of the qualification offer at level 2 and below particularly. I've got a little bit of level 3 information, but I did cover that in my last webinar, but this is level 2 and below. So this is pretty important for those of you that are delivering both 16 to 18 and 19 plus provision. This really will affect you within the next couple of years. So this is just worth being aware of. So this is a quick post-skills bill summary update. Where are we with the skills bill? Well, it's gone through the House of Commons. They didn't really let any of the amendments through that the Lords put in. So there was no real change. There's a couple of minor amendments, but now it's gone back to the House of Lords. So we're in that ping pong back through the House of Commons, back to the House of Lords, back to the House of Commons, whilst the House of Lords, suggest amendments and potentially the House of Commons rejects them all. That is an interesting one because the government doesn't have a majority in the House of Lords, but obviously they have a majority in the House of Commons, so it doesn't really matter what the Lords put in there. Most of the time it's not going to get through if the government doesn't really want it. But there have been a few minor amendments. But just to give you a quick overview of the skills bill, basically LSIPs, it's all been passed, so that's now going to be statutory legislation. Mostly this affects FE colleges, but I can see down the road for those providers that are private and are delivering adult education budget, you're going to get pulled into this at some point, because the reality is if the local skills improvement plan has been developed and they are expecting colleges to deliver to that local skills improvement plan in the future, once they've been published, and that could be realistically for the first date, maybe as soon as August of this year, although there's been a delay, so it might now end up being delayed from the point of view of delivery. The Secretary of State is going to have those intervention powers where providers are not complying with that LSIP and actually delivering to that local skills improvement plan, so they're addressing local labour market needs. And that's all gone through. So there will be statutory legislation to make that a statutory requirement and also give the Secretary of State those intervention powers. And it says with the intervention powers that he could decide to remove contracts, he could decide to reduce funding to a provider. There's all sorts of options that he can use to force providers to comply with those local skills improvement plans. And although it's colleges at the moment, I can't see that they're really going to let private providers out of that further down the line. So it's just worth you being aware of those. They've also made strategic development funding available as part of the skills accelerators. That's basically to support colleges to reshape their provision, which may be why they're only involving colleges at the moment in LSIPs, because the government doesn't know, as we know, giving funding to enable private providers to change their accommodation to support provision to accommodate LSIP requirements. So that will be an interesting one to watch. Could be a little bit of juggling going on there and a little bit of manipulation. The other thing that's popped up here that we've heard about but hasn't been made clear yet is the introduction of the lifelong learning loan entitlement and the individual learning accounts. The consultation for that has now been published, and I've got a slide on that later. But just a quick overview: stimulate the provision of high quality higher technical education, introducing pilots to incentivise more flexible and modular provision. You can see that, and examining fee limits, and basically reforming the qualification offer to accommodate all of the things that you can see there in that summary slide that I put in. And there's a link to the skills bill summary there. It's not so much of a summary. I always think of summary as a few pages. That one's 82 pages long, so it's not that much of a summary, but actually in comparison to the full bill, which I think is about 500 or 600 pages, I suppose it is a summary. It's actually quite an interesting document. If you've got time to read it, gives you a lot more detail about what's going to happen going forward. But I'm going to cover most of the key points here. So, as we know, the qualification reforms are in play and the government is reforming the level 2 offer. I'm not going to read that through. This is the same slide that I did last time. So let's just give you a quick overview of what they are trying to achieve. So basically simplifying the system and making progression pathways clearer, making stronger links between what's delivered in the classroom and the workplace into employment or progression in employment. And increasing the level of qualification which learners are accessing. So they want to make sure that more learners are getting those higher skills and making sure that the technical education system is up to date and meeting labour market needs. So they have published this, the level 2 and below consultation. So I waded through this document earlier on this week and late last week to try and find out and ascertain exactly what it contains and what we're looking at and when. So we'll be responding to this, as will other bodies, and they're basically encouraging everybody to respond to it, providers, individuals, whomever. So what they're saying is that every single level 2 qualification that they're going to fund in the future has to achieve a certain thing. And the two main things really they're wanting to achieve is either entry to employment or progression to a higher level of qualification or study. And that's what they want the level 2 to achieve. And they've said the reason that they want to do this is because there are over 8,000 qualifications at level 2, and realistically I agree with them, that is too many. Some of those qualifications are getting quite old and the content is potentially maybe not up to date. We're certainly, as an awarding body, looking at all of our content, a lot of our qualifications, to decide which ones stay and which ones need to be updated. We as awarding organisations, what I can see at the consultation, are going to have to submit our qualifications for approval to IFATE for inclusion in the level 2 and below offer. And if they don't meet IFATE's requirements of being progression route or entry to employment, there's a few more, a slightly wider scope than that, but that's the basis of it. Then they'll be rejected and exited from funding, and they'll be defunded at a certain point. They want to make the systems easier to navigate. I think we'd all agree that that's a pretty good idea. And then they say they want to provide clear pathways for young people and adults by separating qualifications into distinct groups that align with the different needs of different types of learners. Actually, they've included so many damn groups in this that I'm not sure it is going to be that clear to young people, but hopefully for us it will be clearer. But there's an awful lot in there. So for the 6 qualification groups for 16 to 18 that they are looking to continue to include at level 2 are those ones that you can see listed there. So these will be the qualifications that will remain as publicly funded alongside GCSEs and functional skills. For 16 to 18, there are 6 groups. So you can see there the top 2 that I've mentioned are the main ones, which are supporting students to progress to level 3 techs, including T-levels. Occupational entry qualifications, i.e. those that support progression directly into employment at level 2. They're also including specialist qualifications that might build out on a student's specialist knowledge of a particular sector, subject area or occupational standard. So I suppose that might be some of those ones which could be delivered alongside an apprenticeship or separate to an apprenticeship. That's group 4. I've actually put the groups in there so you can see group 1 and group 2. Group 3 sits in adults, then you've got group 4, the one I just covered, then you've got group 5, which are qualifications which will support students to develop cross-sector skills that add value across multiple occupational standards. So you're talking about things like health and safety, potentially maybe sustainability and some environmental awareness type quals. We're doing a lot of work in City and Guilds at the moment on our offer with regards to that, and you'll hear more about that later on in the year, because inevitably, much like everybody else, we do have a green strategy that we are developing and working on. And then the final one, group 7, group 6 is adults, is qualifications that have content that's substantially different from GCSEs or from occupational standards that support students to progress to a level 3 academic qualification. So then you're talking about things like such as performing arts and maybe the more creativity-based, creative sector-based qualifications that don't potentially have an occupational standard. And then obviously the ESOL qualifications will be group 8. So those are the 6 qualification groups for 16 to 18 that IFATE are going to consider, and if they pass their approval processes, they will remain funded for 16 to 18-year-olds going forward. So that's 16 to 18. Then you've got the sort of overview that I've given there. Basically, what they also are asking here is for 16 to 18 learners that are aiming for entry to employment, they want to give two options. They want to give an occupational entry qualification that's quite large. So this would be a single large qualification, and it would give a broad intro to the occupational route or the occupation that the young person is looking to enter. And that would be in addition to knowledge, skills and behaviours that employers say are needed. So these will basically align with employer-led standards, but they'll give occupational entry, because we know that in some sectors that actually entry starts at level 2. So if you think about some of the construction routes, some of the hair and beauty routes, some of the hospitality and catering routes, occupational entry actually starts at level 2. Then they might do on-programme learning, such as an apprenticeship, or in some cases they're doing work-based learning. But this would be their occupational entry at level 2, and they could work up whilst they were in work in some shape or form. The other option they want to give young people is the choice of studying two slightly smaller, medium-sized qualifications in two different occupational routes. And this would be for young people who are not 100% sure of their direction of travel or their career path that they want to go down. So they would be taking two qualifications of a medium size. They're saying that those qualifications would not include the breadth of introductory content for the larger qualifications flagged in point 1, but they would give the opportunity for a young person to study two separate areas to make a decision about actually where they want to go long term. So those are the two options that the previous page of qualification offers would need to address. So you've still got all of those groups, but those qualifications would have to sit within one of those two offers. So they either have to be a large qualification for occupational entry, or two smaller qualifications to give a young person a choice. So that's your 16 to 18 cohort. Then you've got your level 2 and below reforms for 19+ adults. And what they're basically saying here is they will allow all of the qualifications in the 16 to 18 offer to also be available to adults, but also with the understanding that some adults may not be able to access the large qualifications that were flagged in point 1 previously. They want to be able to offer adults smaller occupational focused qualifications that would support progression into employment or an occupation, in an occupation at level 2, but focusing on the essential knowledge, skills and behaviours. That's group 3 that I flagged. And then they also want to add in qualifications where there's clear demand for employers and good prospects of progression, but no employer-led standard. So if it hasn't got an employer-led standard that's been developed by IFATE, those qualifications will still be available if it's entry to employment or good prospects for progression to a higher level in that particular sector. So again, you're talking about the more creative, performing arts, potentially retail, anything that doesn't actually have an occupational standard developed by IFATE. But I think those occupational standards that IFATE is developing is definitely one to watch, because the ones that they've developed for T levels, we certainly think that there's a likelihood that IFATE will broaden out their occupational standards development, and we might see other occupational standards appearing over the course of the next 2 or 3 years. So some qualifications that you might think might stay, if there is actually an occupational standard, then it might well be that some qualifications there would drop off if an occupational employer-led standard appeared. So that's group 6. Now, the other thing that they're saying is they don't believe that level 1 qualifications provide occupational entry competence. So they're basically saying that if someone has a level 1, they're unlikely to be able to step into a job with a level 1 qualification. So unless the vocational qual supports progression to a technical route at level 2, it will be affected by what they're proposing in these reforms. So you're looking at a whole swathe of vocational qualifications there, that if there isn't a technical route at level 2, those qualifications are going to get culled. So those that are too narrowly focused on specific skills, that don't provide a broad intro to an occupational route. So you're thinking about some of those plumbing and bricklaying quals that are really good for some labouring staff to sort of start off on. Those smaller qualifications, which potentially might not give enough skills as far as DFE are concerned, are going to get culled out of the offer. Also at the moment, a lot of you will know that a lot of qualifications are being culled, have been culled last year and will be culled at the end of this year, that have very low numbers of registrations or no registrations. They're going to be knocked off, and another swathe of quite a few thousand of those will be knocked off on the 1st of August this year. But as they've got such low numbers of registrations on those qualifications, it's not going to affect many providers in the sector, but it might affect 1 or 2 of you. So we're going to get those lists pretty soon, and we will be publishing them. Our industry team will make sure that they're published and sent out to providers that are delivering them, so you've got time to look at them and decide if there's something else you can deliver instead. So that's the level 2 and below reforms for adults. Now this is the level 1 and entry level. So the general view of DFE for level 1 and entry is that everything at level 1 and entry has to be a progression to a level 2 or higher, that it provides entry to a skilled occupation or progression to a work-based pathway. So you're looking at the traineeships or apprenticeships there. And they've got 5 groups of qualifications at level 1 and 4 groups at entry level, and you can see them there. Also within the sort of level 1 and entry level, they're looking at learners that have got specific issues. So you're looking at SEND, you're looking at learners with LLDD, you're looking at those learners that are very far from the workplace that might need that level 1 and entry level type provision. But whatever it is, unless it's obviously enabling them to get on in life and sort of live independently, they're still looking at these qualifications to support direct progression and progression. So it looks very much like things like employability are under a bit of a challenge here. Now there is actually a separate bit of work going on in DFE about employability quals. We're linked into that, so that's some of that information is going to come later. But pre-technical qualifications supporting direct progression, you can see all the lists there. I'm not going to go through all of them, but there's different groups. You can see there's lots of groups of qualification at level 2. There's the 6 for the 16 to 18 and the 2 for adults, and then at level 1 there's 9. There's the 5 groups at level 1 and the 4 groups at entry level. And again, top one you can see has to lead directly to a level pre-technical qualification, level 1 pre-technical qualification. And the entry level 1, entry level 2 and entry level 3 qualifications in English and Maths will stay, and the entry level qualifications at 1, 2 and 3 levels will also stay for ESOL. And any qualifications that might be complementary to a study programme. And the level 1s will be qualifications that are prerequisite to employment, and qualifications that are delivering skills complementary to a study program, and then again the English and Maths quals and the ESOL quals. So those are your entry level 1 and entry level qualifications that will stay in the offer. Anything else is likely to get culled. So personal, social and employability, Maths, English and IT qualifications reforms. So I've just done some quick bullet points here, but the bottom bullet point I'm going to spend a little bit more time. So DFE do recognise that PSE, personal, social and employability qualifications, do support a whole variety of cohorts. And as I said earlier, you've got the SEND and the LLD and those adults that are a long way from the labour market, and that they do offer the motivation and that measurement of achievement for an individual to show that they are actually progressing. And that is motivational for the learner to have some sort of accreditation and qualification there, that actually removing all accreditation at that level is not great for the learner, and they've taken that on board as part of the call for evidence response. I think so many people said you can't take qualifications out at level 1 and below because there's nothing there to motivate the learner to move forward if they're not receiving some sort of certificate or accreditation. A lot of them will think, what's the point? And they deserve to gain a certificate and accreditation just as much as those people at at level 1, level 2, level 3, 4, 5 and 6 do as well. So DFE do propose to continue to fund non-functional skills qualifications and GCSE qualifications in English and Maths at level 1 and below for that small cohort who are not able to get to GCSE and functional skills at level 1 and 2. But they will be removing funding from any other qualifications at level 2 that are not a GCSE or a functional skills qual. So they are all going. So for those of you that might be delivering, bits and pieces of qualifications and modules or units, or using non-functional skills, Maths and English quals at level 1 or below, at level 2, those are all going to go. DfE will continue to fund high quality ESOL quals up to and including level 2. Can imagine there's probably going to be a few that they might reject if they don't think the ESOL quals are good enough quality. So everybody will be working really hard to make sure their ESOL quals are good. Now, this is the important one. Alongside the consultation and also the call for evidence last year, DfE did a consultation on ICT. And they have basically decided that they are going to remove public funding from all level 2 ICT user qualifications and ICT functional skills qualifications from August this year, because they think they've been replaced by the content in the essential digital skills qualifications at level 1. How they've come to that conclusion, I do not know. I know that a load of employers out there are really going to struggle with this, because a lot of people need those ICT user qualifications at level 2. But the government view is that the EDSQs at level 1 offer enough skills for that person to then move into employment, and the rest of it is going to be up to the employer. So those ICT user quals and ICT functional skills quals are going as from August this year, and we know that a lot of providers deliver them. So for those of you that do, be prepared. They're not going to be there, and you need to take that into consideration in your curriculum planning from August this year. Now, there's one thing I'm going to flag here. We did ask a question about what happens if mayoral combined authorities with AEB still want to have access to those qualifications. And for those of you with mayoral MCA AEB contracts, MCAs can request that those ICT functional skills and ICT user qualifications are added to the MCA list of qualifications to still be delivered after August this year. So if you've got an MCA contract and you're in touch with your MCA and you've still got employers that are asking for those quals, you need to be having conversations with your MCA now to get them to put that request in to say, hey, we still want that in our offer because employers are still asking for it and you can't remove it. So please, can we request it's added in from August onwards? Those conversations you need to take place now, because the ESFA have got MCA additional. I think the deadline for MCAs to add additions in is 19th of August. No, sorry, 19th of April, for them to be available from July onwards. So you need to talk to them about that now. So that's what's happening with your personal, social and employability, your maths and English and IT qualifications. Now, this is the lifelong learning title. I've got a timeline for all of this in a minute, guys. I've still got 8 or 9 minutes, so I think I've got time to skip through this. So this is the lifelong loan entitlement. The consultation is out now. They want everybody to respond to it. So providers who are going to be delivering it, awarding bodies like us who might be producing qualifications or modules or content for it, and even individuals and employers and parents, they are encouraging you to respond to this. So basically, they are streamlined. We've got 2 loan systems at the moment, the advanced learner loans for FE and the student higher education loans, or student higher education finance, call it what you will. They are merging that into one loan system, and that one loan system will fund courses and modules and degrees from levels 4 to level 6, as well as potentially full years of study. And that will be regardless of whether that study is being taken in a college or university. They want to allow individuals to study throughout their lives and use that the lifelong loan entitlement to do so, to keep their skills up to date right the way throughout their lifespan. To achieve this, DfE are introducing lifelong learning accounts, LLAs. For those of you that remember ILAs, individual learning accounts, you've probably got the jitters at the moment, but actually if you think about how far on our technology is advanced now, they can introduce something like this far more effectively than they did back in the sort of early noughties. So that will give people a clear understanding of the loan entitlement that they've got. Once upon a time, they talked about putting money into those accounts, but I don't think that's going to happen in our current fiscal position. The country, as we all know, is fiscally challenged and the Treasury is not going to allow that to happen, but they will be able to see what their loan entitlement will be. We don't have any ideas about what the amount is going to be yet, but what we do know is that as from 22-23, DfE will be piloting some trials of that student finance for the lifelong loan entitlement. They're calling it the short course HE trial. Those will be for those short modular courses from levels 4 to 6 to enable adults to upskill, and they're going to do some trials later on this year, so watch out for that. I don't think that's necessarily going to be just HE short course trial. Will it just be confined to HE partners only? I don't know. I think that's just one to watch. But basically what they're wanting is for the lifelong loan, for the lifelong learning accounts, to allow learners to space out their studies, transfer credits between providers, partake in more part-time study to accommodate their working lives, because most adults, as we know, are working. The other thing they're going to do to support all of this is obviously introducing the higher technical qualifications at levels 4-5, which can be delivered by HEs, by institutes of technology, and by FE colleges. The first HTQs are going to be available from delivery in 2022-23. Those will be the digital ones. There's actually going to be only a very small number of them available initially. How they're going to work that when we've actually got the current advanced learner loans, I'm supposing that the current advanced learner loans are going to be the thing that they'll use to deliver those initially, until the lifelong loan entitlement is introduced in 2025. So they've got a consultation out on how that's all going to work now, and if you're considering this as a provider, you really need to take a look at that consultation in more detail and decide whether there's things in there that you think are going to be a constraint, and then make a response to that, either as a group of providers or via your networks, or via ALP, put in something to ALP, because I'm sure that ALP will be responding to this if you're a private provider, or I'm sure that the AOC will be responding to it as well. So that's the lifelong learning entitlement, and these are the timelines. Now, this is a slide I've produced for internal, but it's easy for me to share with you, share with all of our external partners like yourselves as well. So you can see there that the second row down is important, because that's your level 2 and below reforms that I've just been talking about. So the level 2 response call for evidence was published last year, and we've got the response to that that's now been published, but also you've got the consultation, which has just been published, which is there in orange, and the removal of those level 2 IT functional skills and IT user quals in 2022 from the 1st of August, and also a list of qualifications with low or no publicly funded registrations are also going to be removed from the 1st of August this year as well. Then the level 2 reforms, this is when the level 2 reforms start to impact, is further over on the right hand side in that pink box. The level 2 quals that do not map to progression routes are going to be removed from the publicly funded offer, starting with construction qualifications in 2024-25, and then followed on by other level 2 qualifications, and finally in 2027 the level 1 and the entry level and the ESOL PSE qualifications will find their reforms happening. So that will be any ESOL qualifications that the IFATE doesn't consider to be high enough quality, and entry level 1 and PSE qualifications in 26-27 will also see removal if they're not meeting that progression to a technical or progression into employment groups that DFE have published. So, and then you can see down below that the level 3 reforms and the gradual removal of level 3 applied generals and other technical qualifications which conflict with T levels and the T level waves. And the next slide does all of that in a bit more detail, so I'll show you that in a minute, but I'm not going to go through it. And then you've got the next line, which is the lifelong learning entitlements, the Trailblazer pilots later on this year, and then implementation of the lifelong loan entitlement and the individual skills accounts or lifelong learning accounts from 24-25, and those quals and programs, those short qual programs at levels 4 to 6. And then finally at the bottom there, I've just put in a little bit of information because the ESFA, you may have known that there's an ESA review going on. That's now been published. And what they're basically saying is that all responsibility for policy that the ESFA has been responsible for will be moving to the Department for Education, and the ESFA will just become responsible for funding. Anybody remember the Further Education Funding Council? That's showing my age, isn't it? For those of you that go further back, you will remember the FEFC, the Further Education Council, and that's all they did was funding. The ESFA is sort of reverting to a funding body type approach. So they'll manage funding, manage data, track funding, be responsible for the veracity of that funding and your delivery of that funding to government standards and requirements to make sure that they're getting probity for the public funding that they handle as a body. Although obviously a lot of that funding at AEB goes out to other bodies, but ESFA are still responsible for handing it out and tracking and monitoring it and tracking the data. So that's just the ESFA reform. And this is the level 3. These are the wave 1, 2, 3, and 4 pathways for T-levels. And when the technical and applied general qualifications will be removed according to the national rollout of all those T-levels. And you can see those are the T-levels up the top, and this is the academic year and the removal of technical qualifications that replicate T-level content in that bottom row here. And that applied general removal that was brought up as part of the skills bill, with lots of bodies basically saying that some applied generals, they did not want them removed and they thought they should stay and remain eligible for delivery alongside T-levels. That got rejected from the skills bill, so that is not going to be going forward, and they will continue to remove applied generals that conflict with T-level content. So that's not going to happen. There's going to be no relief on there. They're going forward with just T-levels if there's a T-level in that area. So that's the timeline for that. And just a quick one here, Ofqual are also doing a consultation. Wow, there's a lot of them out there at the moment, basically on the regulation of level 3 qualifications, and they want views from providers and awarding bodies, from individual learners and employers, anybody who's got an interest on the grading of qualifications, the assessment of qualifications, and the titles of qualifications. It's a fairly short consultation, but it's linked to the reforms for post-16. And they're working with the Institute on this, that are going to be responsible for approvals, and consulting on the criteria for assessment and for grading and for titling of qualifications. So that's linked to all of that. So if you've got any thoughts on grading, assessment and titling of quals, do respond to the Ofqual qualification or have a look at it, because that's going to affect potentially, you know, the way that qualifications are assessed, or the assessments attached to them, or the way that qualifications are titled, and also to the grading as well. That was published on the 24th of Feb, and it runs until the 20th of April and closes at 23:45 on April the 20th. So that's the Ofqual one. Oh wow, I thought I'd finished and I don't. Okay, so this I will skip through very quickly because I've only got 15 minutes left. So just to say, we have been doing a lot of work on our adult skills offer, because a lot of providers have said to us that they're getting more and more of a need for delivering short, sharp interventions for adults to upskill them or give them new skills. And they don't want to be delivering full quals with the AEB. They want to deliver maybe modules or components of our quals that will support particular business areas like construction or adult care. So we have done an awful lot of work looking at components and units that we've got that might support particular sector subject areas, and our industry team have pulled together all of those individual units or quals that will support upskilling in particular areas, and they've made them available via our set of delivery plans that you can see. These are on our main page here. You can see the path that you will follow. It's home, qualification, delivery, adult skills, and delivery plans. So if you click on that on the sort of adult skills page and then click on the delivery plans page, it'll take you to a page of delivery plans we've got for each sector subject area, with really useful units and components that might support your delivery of AEB. So I'm flagging them because so many providers have said, you know, rather than wade through our unit warehouse or wade through walled garden to find those, we've done a lot of that work for you to give you those ones which we've had flagged by employers and by providers as being most useful. So that's now available and up on our website. We've also got the Great Jobs campaign, because a lot of our research in the last year, and I'm flagging this because it's ongoing throughout the whole of this year. This is research, but also a campaign that we've got, because it's become so apparent, and a lot of you may well know this, that there are certain occupations that we are struggling to fill vacancies in really, really badly for a lot of employers. And a lot of that is because a lot of young people either are no longer interested in those jobs, they don't understand what the career paths for those jobs are, they don't understand where they could go with those jobs in terms of career path and growing their opportunities and progressing. So we've done a lot of research with both EMSI, the labour market analysis organisation, to look at where those gaps are, and we've got a campaign ongoing, and this is the link to it, so it's worth looking, because we've got a lot of providers that have been speaking at roundtable events, and we've got lots of combined authority leads that are speaking, and lots of employers that are speaking and getting involved in this to try and showcase opportunities in all of those areas. And those are teaching, construction, care, hospitality and catering, chefing roles. There's all sorts of jobs where, and the full campaign, which is not, it's not a massive report, it's very easy to read, but shows all those areas where we've got essential jobs and essential worker jobs that keep the UK going, where we're experiencing massive shortages in applications to employer roles. Some of this is about encouraging employers to get better at recruiting and offering those jobs, but also get better with their offer and being more flexible in terms of the jobs that they offer to people. And there's a poor reputation in some sectors, as we know. Hang on, I'm just going to take a drink of water. And low pay in some areas. So we're also working with employers to see what we encourage them to do to change their approach to the jobs they offer in terms of flexibility and pay grades, etc. So there's a massive piece of work going on for the full year, and Kirsty, our CEO, is leading on that. And it's a really great campaign, because these are the jobs that keep the UK working, and they're the really essential jobs, jobs that some of you do in teaching and lecturing, which are so important. As well as those other key jobs in construction and engineering and other areas that are also incredibly important. And we need to encourage more young people into them. And unfortunately, over the last 15 or 20 years, the government has, they've recognised the need for higher level skills, but there is now recognition also that, some of those more technical skills at level 2 and 3 are also incredibly important to keep the country going. You can't ignore them. Which the government has tended to do over the last few years, but really we're drawing attention to the fact that these are the jobs that keep the country going, so you can't ignore them. They've got to give as much attention to these jobs as well as to the sort of higher level skills jobs at 4 to 6. So to support this, we've produced some Ready For, which is basically showcasing particular industries. We've got Ready For construction and Ready For social adult care, which basically are 3 or 4 hour digital courses that showcase those industries to people who are either unsure or for adults who want to understand what it's like to work in construction or to like to work in social care. And we're looking at potentially other sector areas as well for these 3 or 4 hour digital courses. You can see there that it'll give them a real sense of flavour of what it's like working in those sectors, what the career paths are and what the progression paths are. And on completion, the learner gets some job search tips from employers who work in those sectors, because we've designed these with employers who said, we really need to showcase what the opportunities are in our sectors. What can you do to help us? So we've designed these Ready For courses with employers, so that they're really key. And these are the new resources that are available for construction and social care. And we've got our industry teams are running webinars over the next couple of weeks in all these areas. So I've just put that slide in to show you when those webinars are happening. If you work in construction or social care, they're really going to be key to see what new resources are being developed by our industry teams to support you to deliver. And they'll also demonstrate those Ready For short courses, so you can have a look at them as well and in more detail and see what they might or might not do for you. And then finally, just to keep in touch slide, because all of the information, all of those purchases can be made on Walled Garden, are found on Walled Garden, or you can talk to the direct sales team and the customer support teams if you want to know more about them and just want to have a chat about what it might entail and what that's all about. So that's it. I've just about made it with 7 minutes to go. I know that was an awful lot of information, everybody, so I'm just going to have a click on questions now and pop out the questions and see if any of you have got any questions. I'm sure some of you probably will. Can I expand that out at all, make it bigger, because I can't read it because I've forgotten to bring my glasses with me today, which is well done, Bryony. I'm just trying to expand the questions out, everybody. Okay, so I'm just scrolling down. I can hear you, I can see you, I can hear you. Your notification just threw me. I thought my PC was playing up. Oh, sorry about that, Natalie. Yes, you will get a copy of the slides, of course. I'll be sending out the slides in the next 24 hours with the recording, because I have recorded this as well. I've got a few people saying, please run a session on T-level ILR. Okay, right. I will get something together. It won't be in the next couple of weeks, because I'm going to the annual apprenticeship conference, and I'm running a few presentation sessions at various LTIP sessions and provider networks, but sometime maybe towards the end of April, I will be able to put a session on for, actually I'm going on holiday in April, so that won't be so easy. I'm actually going away for 2 weeks, everybody. I'll try and see if I can put something together for early April for a session on T-level ILR. It'll only be a half-hour lunchtime session, but I will put something together on FALA and Q and Z codes. Yep, that would be okay. So I will do that, everybody. How can a new provider apply for funding? It all appears a bit cumbersome. Oh yes, it is. The apprenticeship register seems to be currently closed for new applications. Okay, Ram, yeah, can you drop me an email? I should have put my email address on this. I always forget to do that. So my email address, you'll get that because you'll get a copy of the slides and the recording in the next 24 hours. Ram, can you drop me a line? I will talk you through that. I'm not sure what's happening with OTAP at the moment. I'm actually doing a workshop at the annual apprenticeship conference on hints and tips for getting for a successful ROTAP application. If any of you are going to the annual apprenticeship conference, if you want to get hints and tips for a successful ROTAP application, I helped 4 providers last year with successful applications, and I've done several in the previous years to that. So if you're coming up for reapplication or application, I'm running that workshop at the annual apprenticeship conference. Ram, I can talk you through that and where we are. Will the slides be sent out? Yes. What about those still on apprenticeship frameworks who must do ICT? If they're already registered on those qualifications, Gina, they will be able to finish them. It's just no new starts for ICT quals, ICT user quals from the 1st of August this year. And as frameworks are now closed and there can be no new starts on frameworks, you will be able to finish them. There just won't be any new starts allowed after the 1st of August on those ICT quals. So will level 3 stay in advanced learner loans? That's a good question, Jane. I'm really not sure. We have asked DFE what they intend to do, because obviously those new lifelong learning loans are only for level 4 to 6, and there's no news whatsoever at the moment about what's going to happen with level 3 for advanced learner loans. But the learner loan, advanced FE advanced learner loans are merging into that lifetime loan entitlement. So what I'm thinking is there going to be something with the National Skills Fund? Are they going to enable people to take a second level 3 with the National Skills Fund? They've already done that from the 1st of April for those adults who are unemployed. So I'm wondering if they're going to keep that in place, but it doesn't really sort that retraining at level 3. So I know that's been flagged, and we've flagged it, and we are having conversations and asking, as are, you know, various other membership bodies like AOC and AELP. So we don't know yet, and I'm waiting to hear, Jane, and I'm hoping that we'll hear something at my next webinar in the summer term. I can come back to you with some answers on that, but it's a question I've been asking, and there's no answer for it yet. Miss what was said, could you confirm the meaning of the abbreviation? Oh, functional skills qualification on the slide in Entitled PSE. Sorry, FSQs is functional skills qualifications. Will the slides be sent out? Yes. Will we get a recording? Yes. Yes, please, to T-levels. Okay. Great. So thank you very much. Brilliant. Ram, you'll send me an email. Great, Ram. I look forward to receiving that from you. We can have a chat on a one-to-one basis rather than me do that here. That's all the questions, which means hopefully I answered all your questions, and you're getting a couple of minutes back, everybody. So thank you very much for joining me today. Always great to have you. And next session will be the summer term, probably sometime in May. And also I will try and fit in that T-level session for everybody before I go on holiday on the 22nd of April. So watch out for that. I'll put it on social media and also send it out via the funding emails that I send out to everybody. Have a great day and a great weekend, and I will catch you all soon. Thanks, everyone.